Diese Geschichten kommen aus Deutschland und schildern die wahren Lebensereignisse der Familie Schuster während des Zweiten Weltkrieges. Meine Mutter Anita und ihre Schwester Roswitha waren Flüchtlinge und mussten mit ihrer Familie wegen der russischen Invasion aus ihrer Heimatstadt fliehen. Die Ereignisse sind ein Teil unserer Geschichte und dieser Dokumentarfilm wird uns helfen, sie nie zu vergessen. Es bleibt die Hoffnung, dass vielleicht eines Tages kein Kind die Not und den Verlust eines Krieges erleiden muss.
We lived in our house in Sopot at the Bülowallee.
We went to school there.
Yes.
Grammar school.
Yes.
And a beautiful, beautiful area too. And I remember it smelled from linden trees.
Linden
Do you know
trees,
linden
yes.
trees? They have this aroma that is incredible. And there's one up the street here, and I can smell that tree half a mile away. And then nearby our house was the opera, outdoor opera, which was famous. And it was on a hill, and they did Wagner operas, which were very popular, with Hitler. But to hear the music and smell this, those are lasting memories in me.
And one time we went there to pick berries. Remember? I remember we picked, and all of a sudden there was a witch. She had red eyes, and she was, and her hair was gray and going in all directions. It was horrible. We were so horrified. And she came and picked too. She was mental, I'm sure. Crazy. But that was one memory I never forget.
So we stayed there. Well, I tell you, the war started in '39. We stayed there until '45. And then everyone had to go because the Russians were coming, were pushing the German army back. By then, most people knew the war was lost.
Vor der Kaserne, vor dem großen Tor, steht eine Laterne und steht sie noch davor. Dort wollen wir uns wiedersehen, bei der Laterne wollen wir stehen, wie einst Lili Marleen, wie einst Lili Marleen.
So anyway, in '45, then we had to leave because the German army came back. And so they occupied our whole area.
Yeah, the soldiers were in our house in all the beautiful villas, and we had to be in the basement because they were bombing. And I remember the soldiers were 1 kilometer away, and there was a Russian plane, and one soldier, a Fallschirm, a parachute came down, and that's when they raced out and were aiming, and it was fascinating. And Mama came out and said, "You don't shoot as a human being." And they said, "Frau Schuster, we have war, but we don't shoot him, we shoot one of the lines of the parachuting thing." And they did that, and then you could see the parachute was
At an angle, yeah.
At an angle, and they were racing into the forest to get him.
I remember the soldiers, the one was there who played beautiful piano, and it was the Trauermarsch from Chopin, was it?
Yeah, he was the organist from a dome, a large church in North Germany, Lübeck. The Lübecker Dome is a famous church, and he was their organist. Can you imagine that man played on my mother's? My mother was a piano teacher.
Yeah.
And he had a grand piano, and he played.
It was beautiful,
Unbelievable.
with all his soul. And then the next day he had to go into the forest with a Panzerfaust.
He never returned, he got killed. That was all in that time. But so we had to leave. leave our house, everything. We only had the clothes we had on our body.
I remember der Führer Adolf Hitler sagt, everybody has to leave. We had to leave.
And so they had a truck for us, and we all got in back of the truck and drove from Sopot to Danzig. And driving through Danzig, Danzig was burning, totally burning. Every house had black smoke and flames coming out of the windows, and you hear the bombings and you heard the torpedoes hitting the city. And remember that we saw those 3 men hanging from a tree?
Yes.
And they had a sign in front, I'm a deserter. And
Yes, I remember.
I'm a deserter, yeah.
Yeah.
And then we came to Danzig, to the ship. My father had gotten tickets,
For the Gustloff.
and the name of the ship was Wilhelm Gustloff. And it was very famous because it eventually it was torpedoed by the Russians. And but my mother came to the ship. She looked these thousands of people that were waiting to go on this big ship, and she said, "I'm not. This ship is going to go down. I'm not going on
She
it."
had a vision.
Yes, she had a vision, and she did have visions, like when my brother died.
Yeah.
And she had.
And Papa threw the tickets so far, he was furious because
Yes.
it was the last possibility to get out.
Yeah, the
On
Russians had already
yeah.
encircled.
Yeah.
So to get out, this was the last time to go out by the sea. You couldn't go out by land. We had to stay overnight in this silo because my mother didn't want to go on this ship. And the silo was, of course, filled with I don't know how many refugees. And it had layers of grain. And between each layer of grain, there was an open space and boards. So we children were put on this open space. I remember I had to go all the way in, crawl in,
Yeah.
and
Claustrophobic.
I couldn't reach over, turn over, because my shoulder, and I was only 11 or 12, it would hit the board above. And then came Jude and Gregor Wilhelm.
Yeah.
It was, I heard the grown-ups speak and say, we won't die of any bombings, we will die of dust, because if a bomb hits this silo, it would just, the dust will kill us all. So, you know, as a child, you die your death 1,000 times. Then my father somehow miraculously found another freighter, a much, much smaller ship, which was full of soldiers and refugees too. And it was hollow, it usually carried coal.
Just about a week we were on the water, and then we came to Kiel, and it was just ein Schutthaufen. It was all, there was not one stone above the other. Everything was bombed. And remember, Mama had to look for the Red Cross, and we were hovering together on the street between these ruins, and she said, wait here. So we were hovering together, and she went to find a nurse, or Red Cross nurse, to get help. But I forget the fear and the loneliness, and then she came and got us.
They put us on an island, Pellworm, yeah. And the island people didn't want us because
They didn't want Flüchtlinge, refugees. But they had to take us. They had to take us. So we had one room.
We slept in one bed. We all four slept in one
Yes.
twin bed.
Yes. There was no electricity, no
Yeah.
running water
Right.
on that island. They had rainwater they collected.
And
In that first month, our little brother died. Reinhard had pneumonia or meningitis.
Meningitis, yes.
And I remember how his face, it was paralyzed somehow, or what was it? Es hat gezuckt.
Yeah, he was shaking and trembling and everything.
And the doctor came and said he will not.
He cannot survive.
Because there was no medication for it.
Yeah.
And he said, yeah, there's nothing I can do. And Reinhard was with us for 3 days in the same room. Das war schwer. And then Opa found us, our father found us. And the interesting thing is, he went by his feelings, because you couldn't find out where people went. And that day, that morning, I never forget it. You had a dream. You went to Danzig to go to the Bürgermeister or so, and you had golden hair, and you cut off your hair to get Papa back. Mama had to get up. She had the feeling she had to go to the harbor to see if Papa would come.
She had to see the boat. Every day a boat came,
Yes.
a ferry
But
came.
at that day she had to go,
Yeah.
and you went with her.
I went with her and I
And
saw
you
the
can-
boat come,
Yeah.
and I saw the chimney, and next to the chimney I saw my father with his hat.
But you didn't know it was Papa.
I didn't know. It looked familiar. I looked at him all the time. I thought that could be Papa. And it was.
Yeah, and then